The day started with my maid of honor, Jessica, bursting into the bridal suite like her hair was on fire. "Okay, don't panic," she said, which is universally the worst way to prevent panic. "But your mother-in-law is here." "Already?" I glanced at the clock. 3 hours before the ceremony. "Why?" "And she's—" "Lauren, she's wearing white." I laughed, adjusting my robe. "Like white? Or like champagne that she'll argue isn't technically white?" Jessica held up her phone. The photo made my blood freeze. Margaret stood in the church vestibule, wearing an actual wedding dress. Not a white cocktail dress, not an ivory pantsuit. A full wedding gown with a train, veil, and what looked suspiciously like a bouquet. "Please tell me this is photoshopped." I watched her walk in. "She told your cousin Beth she deserves to be celebrated too, and that Marcus would want his mother to shine on his special day." Marcus, my sweet, conflict-avoidant fiancé who'd begged me to just keep the peace. Every time his mother pulled stunts like showing up to my bridal shower in a mother of the groom sash that lit up, or announcing our engagement on Facebook before we could, or trying to plan a competing reception because ours didn't have her favorite foods. "Get Marcus," I said quietly. "Now. He's not supposed to see you before." "Jessica. Get Marcus." 10 minutes later, Marcus stood in my doorway, looking like he'd rather face a firing squad than deal with whatever was happening. He was already in his tux, hair perfectly styled, and I felt a pang of love for this man who was about to prove whether he deserved to marry me. "Your mother is wearing a wedding dress," I said simply. His face went through the 5 stages of grief in record time. "Maybe it's not." Jessica showed him the photo. "Jesus Christ," he muttered, then looked at me apologetically. "Sorry. I mean, Jesus Christ. Handle it, Marcus. I'm not walking down that aisle if your mother looks like she's about to marry you herself." "Lauren." "No." I stood, still in my robe and curlers, but feeling like armor wouldn't be enough for this conversation. "I've accepted the cake she ordered behind our backs. I've accepted the mother-son dance playlist that's longer than our entire reception. I've accepted the fact that she invited 40 people we specifically said no to. But I will not have her in a wedding dress at my wedding. I'll talk to her." "You'll do more than talk. You'll fix this, or we'll have a very different conversation about our future." He left looking miserable but determined. Jessica poured me champagne. "You know," she said, "my mom wore white to my wedding too. But it was a pantsuit, and she spilled red wine on herself during cocktail hour. Accidentally, of course." "Of course." An hour passed. The photographer arrived, confused why the bride was drinking champagne in her robe instead of getting ready. The other bridesmaids trickled in, each one with their own Margaret horror story from the morning. "She told me my dress makes me look pregnant," said my cousin Sarah. "She asked if I was the one who turned Lauren against traditional values," added my friend Monica, who was gay and very much not responsible for my feminism. "She brought her own makeup artist," my sister Kate reported. "For a touch-up. The woman's been here since 7 a.m. Finally, Marcus returned, looking defeated. "She won't change." "Excuse me?" "She says it's not white, it's pearl. And she's not changing because she already had professional photos taken this morning." "Professional photos?" "Of course she did." "Lauren, what do you want me to do?" "Physically remove her." "I want you to choose," I said quietly. "Your wife or your mother. Because if she's in a wedding dress when I walk down that aisle, I'm turning around and walking right back out." "You wouldn't." "Try me." He left again. This time, I heard shouting from down the hall. Margaret's voice, shrill and indignant. Marcus, louder than I'd ever heard him. Other voices joining in, his father, his brother Kevin, my parents trying to mediate. I focused on my makeup, letting the artist work while chaos reigned outside. This was supposed to be my day. Our day. Instead, it was becoming Margaret's show as usual. Father Patrick knocked and entered, his expression carefully neutral. "Lauren, might I have a word?" "If you're here to tell me to turn the other cheek, Father, I'm fresh out of cheeks." He smiled. "Actually, I was wondering if you could fill me in on some context. Margaret is insisting she needs to process down the aisle before you, and she's making some rather interesting claims about promises made to her by Marcus." "What kind of promises?" "That he promised she could share the spotlight. That you agreed to a dual celebration. That this was always the plan. Father, the only plan was for me to marry Marcus. His mother has created this entire fantasy where she's somehow also getting married today." He nodded thoughtfully. "I see. And has she been? Well, has she been entirely stable lately?" Something in his tone made me look at him sharply. What do you mean? It's just that she seems to be under the impression that she recently participated in some sort of ceremony. She mentioned a commitment ceremony that I supposedly officiated. But I have no record of such a thing. A commitment ceremony? With someone named Richard? She was quite insistent that I should remember it, as it was just last month, and very meaningful. Father. Richard is Marcus's uncle. His father's brother. The priest's eyebrows climbed toward heaven. I see. Margaret has been married to Marcus's father for 35 years. I see. Are you telling me she's claiming she had a commitment ceremony with her brother-in-law? That appears to be the case. She's quite adamant about it. Shows me photos on her phone of herself in that very dress with a man who is decidedly not her husband. I grabbed Jessica's phone and started scrolling through Facebook. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. Margaret's posts from last month, from what she'd told everyone was a renewal of vows with Marcus's father. Except Marcus's father wasn't in any of the photos. Richard was. Oh my God, I breathed, zooming in on photo after photo. Margaret in the wedding dress. Richard in a tux. The two of them cutting a cake, dancing, kissing. She actually married her brother-in-law. Technically, Father Patrick said carefully, without a legal license or recognized officiant, she didn't marry anyone. But it does appear she believes she did. Does Tom know? I asked, referring to Marcus's father. Does anyone know? I think, Father Patrick said slowly. This might explain why Richard isn't here today, and why Tom has been drinking rather heavily in the vestry. The door burst open. Marcus stood there, looking like he'd aged 5 years in the last hour. We have a problem. Bigger than your mother wearing a wedding dress? She's now insisting that she and Uncle Richard process down the aisle together, as a recommitment to love. She says you agreed to make this a double ceremony. Marcus, I said very calmly, please tell me your uncle isn't here. He just arrived. In a matching tux. With a boutonniere. Father Patrick stood. I think perhaps I should go have a chat with Margaret. Father, I called as he reached the door. Maybe ask her about the commitment ceremony? In front of Tom? He gave me a look that was decidedly unpriestly in its mischief. I think that's an excellent idea. What happened next was related to me by no fewer than 12 witnesses, each adding their own dramatic flair. But the basic facts were these. Father Patrick approached Margaret in the vestibule, where she was holding court in her wedding dress, explaining to arriving guests that this was a special surprise for her son. Margaret, Father Patrick said loudly, I'm so confused about this commitment ceremony you mentioned. The one with Richard? The vestibule went silent. Was this before or after your husband Tom found out? The priest continued innocently. Tom, who'd been steadily draining a flask in the corner, suddenly laser-focused on his wife. What commitment ceremony? Margaret went pale beneath her professionally applied makeup. It was just a spiritual thing. You wouldn't understand. I'd like to understand, Tom said, moving forward. Please, explain to me about this spiritual thing with my brother. Richard chose that moment to arrive, strutting in like a peacock in his matching tux. He saw Margaret in the dress, Tom's murderous expression, and the crowd of fascinated wedding guests, and did the only sensible thing. He turned around and left. Richard, Margaret called, starting after him. Don't leave. We promised to support Marcus together. You promised what? Tom roared. And that's when Father Patrick delivered the killing blow. Margaret, is this the same dress from your commitment ceremony last month? With your husband's brother? The explosion was immediate. Tom lunging for the door to chase Richard. Margaret shrieking about being misunderstood. Guests pulling out phones to record. My elderly grandmother asking loudly if this was dinner theater. In the chaos, Marcus appeared at my side. I'm so sorry, he said. I had no idea about any of this. Your mother has been having an affair with your uncle. Apparently. And tried to turn our wedding into their coming-out party. It seems that way. And you still want to marry me after this? He took my hands. Lauren, I want to marry you more than ever. You're the sanest person in my life. Please don't leave me alone with these people. Despite everything, I laughed. What do we do now? Father Patrick rejoined us, looking slightly disheveled but oddly pleased. Well, the good news is that Margaret and Tom have left. Separately. Richard's car was last seen heading toward the interstate. And the bad news? Half your guests are in the parking lot watching Tom try to set Richard's abandoned boutonniere on fire, while Margaret sobs on your photographer. I looked at Marcus. Marcus looked at me. Father Patrick looked at both of us. Or, the priest suggested gently, we could proceed with the wedding. The church is still decorated. Your guests, the ones inside, are seated. And I believe you two came here to get married. But the drama, Marcus started. We'll be there after the honeymoon, Father Patrick assured him. But this moment, this is yours. Don't let them take it. I thought about it. About the months of planning, the perfect dress hanging in the suite, the vows I'd written, the man I loved despite his insane family. Jessica, I called. Get my dress. We're doing this. But your mother-in-law is no longer welcome. Anyone wearing a wedding dress who isn't me gets bounced. Your father is already on it, Kate reported, checking her phone. He's recruited Uncle Mike, and they're doing parking lot security. And so, an hour later than planned, I walked down the aisle to marry Marcus. The crowd was smaller. We'd lost about 30 guests to the parking lot drama. But the ones who remained were there for us, not the show. Tom never returned. Margaret spent the ceremony crying in her car, still in the wedding dress. Richard was reportedly halfway to Canada. But none of that mattered as Marcus and I exchanged vows, promising to love each other despite, and because of everything. For better or worse, I said, looking into his eyes. And we've already seen the worse. It can only get better from here, he replied. Father Patrick, bless him, added an impromptu blessing. May your love be stronger than family drama, may your patience outlast your in-laws, and may your marriage be the only one celebrated today. The reception was unique. Half the guests spent the cocktail hour updating the other half on the parking lot saga. The DJ had to be told not to play the mother-son dance playlist, all 45 minutes of it. The videographer asked if we wanted the pre-ceremony incident included in the final edit. We did not. But we danced. We laughed. We ate cake that Margaret hadn't ordered. We celebrated with the people who chose to witness our love over the circus outside. My new brother-in-law Kevin gave a toast that brought down the house. To Marcus and Lauren. May your marriage be everything my mother's commitment ceremony to my uncle was not. Legal, appropriate, and not requiring a restraining order. By the time we left for our honeymoon, the dust was settling. Tom had filed for divorce. Margaret was staying with her sister, still insisting she'd done nothing wrong. Richard had sent a text saying he was finding himself in Vancouver. Any regrets? Marcus asked as we boarded the plane. Just one, I admitted. What's that? I wish I'd let Jessica spill red wine on her earlier. Would have saved us all a lot of trouble. He laughed, and I knew we'd be okay. We'd survived the wedding from hell. Everything else would be easy. 2 years later, Margaret still tells people I ruined her special day. She's dating someone new, not Richard, who apparently found himself a Canadian girlfriend and never came back. Tom remarried a lovely woman who finds the whole wedding story hilarious. And every anniversary, Marcus and I toast Father Patrick, who knew exactly what questions to ask and when to ask them. He still says it was divine intervention. I think it was just a priest who'd seen enough family drama to know when someone needed to be exposed in their own wedding dress. Either way, we're grateful. After all, not every couple can say their wedding day included accidental bigamy, parking lot arson attempts, and a mother-in-law in a wedding dress. It certainly wasn't the wedding I planned, but it's definitely the one we remember.